Need to turn the recording back on. Okay. So,
So I've never attended one of these before, but I just presented on advocacy at a state conference last week. So it's something near and dear to my heart.
oh, good. Okay. I most of the board is in Puerto Rico. I'm not, so you get me today. So we will see how many people actually do show up. It might be smaller than normal.
What's an average crowd?
It's been around 25, 30 people.
That's a pretty good crowd.
Yeah. And and you have a second person, Madeline, that comes,
Another interpreter?
another
I don't
interpreter.
I don't think so. I think it'll just be me today, as far as I know.
Okay. Well, we'll get started at 3. And we'll see what people have to talk about, statewide, nationwide, see what's going on.
Well, then I guess I'll step away briefly and stretch before we start this.
Sounds good. Hey, Brooke, how are you?
Hi, Dawn. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Have to, get in mic down.
You should have had Puerto Rico behind you.
It's a beach, but it's not Puerto Rico.
I'm surprised you didn't go.
My state wouldn't let me.
Really? Hmm.
I worked really hard on it for about 6 weeks, including meeting with like the Department of Justice. We could talk about that on the advocacy call. So
I
yeah, no. So I am considered a state employee, even though I am employed by the Silk. My employer of record is the state of Oregon. And no state employees are allowed to travel to Puerto Rico.
really.
Mhm. And it gets a little tricky because about a year and a half ago, the process of governor appointments changed. And so council members are still appointed by the governor, but they're also entered into a state system called Workday. And some of the systems consider them state employees as well. So we have about 15 months if the conference is to be held in Puerto Rico to advocate for systems change so that even our council members would be able to attend a conference in Puerto Rico. So
Wow. Okay. Well, it is 3:01 Central. So
like somewhere.
yeah, somewhere, right? Um, my name is Don Dew. I am a member of the Board of April. Um, it is the Advocacy Committee. I know people will come on more. It might be a small crowd today. We do have people in Puerto Rico um, who are on the board. They won't be on. Um, we can go around and introduce if we want, since there's not very many people, or not. It's up to you. But it'll be good to have a good conversation that way. We can start with Don if you want to.
Hi, this is my first time attending. My name is Don Posh. I'm an independent living specialist with Indigo out of Superior. I live in Spooner or north of Spooner. I'm a woods dweller, so I'm in the middle of what you guys would refer to as nowhere. And the nearest town's got probably about 2,500 people. And that's about 10 miles away.
And for us who don't necessarily know where the middle of nowhere Spooner is, what state is that in?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, I guess Superior, Wisconsin is where our office is, right by Duluth. Everybody knows where Duluth is. Nobody knows where Superior is. They're right next to each other on the border.
Good. I'm glad you're here,
Thank you.
Brooke.
Good afternoon. I'm Brooke Wilson. I am also a member of the April board. I serve as the Silk rep, and I am the executive director for the State Independent Living Council in the state of Oregon.
Nice. Glad you're here. And Lauren.
Hi, Lauren Baker, Public Policy and Outreach Specialist for Disability Network Eastern Michigan. We are a SIL, one of 15 in the state. We cover Oakland and Macomb County, which we neighbor Wayne County, so we're pretty close to Detroit. And we also cover 5 counties in the Thumb. So that is our more rural area of the state. So a total of 7 counties. I've been here 12 years. This October will be 12 years. We have 47 legislators. We have our upcoming legislative day at the state capitol in Lansing on Wednesday, May 8th. And I have 25 appointments scheduled with our legislators or the legislative staff. We're taking 8 staff members and breaking up into some teams to have those meetings to share the work that our cell is doing. So happy to. And
Okay,
I'm actually hopping off. I'd be turning my camera off. I'm getting in the car because our workday ends at 4, but I'll be listening. So I'm gonna turn my camera off.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. One thing I did not say is where I work too. I work for a Center for Independent Living in Sioux City, Iowa, but I'm also the silk director in Nebraska. I actually live in Nebraska, in a rural town of 1,000 people in Nebraska. So it's an odd situation, both being a silk director and a SIL director, but it is what it is. We have to do what we do, right? But so what we were going to do is kind of talk to people today about issues affecting their state and localities first, and see what's kind of going on in their areas. And Don, you had said you had just given a presentation, right? In your state?
Yeah, we had it's called the Adlin Conference. It's where we get together with the Aging and Disability Resource Centers and the Greater Wisconsin Aging Network. I'm not sure what it's GWAR is what but I'm not sure exactly what all the letters stand for. But I did a presentation on advocacy, trying to show people how simple it is to just take part in the simple parts of advocacy as far as, well, I used to know our Senate minority leader, and she said, if I get 5 calls, I start paying attention. If it's 5 calls about one subject, and trying to let people know that how small of a number we need to move things. And I'm hoping that that rang true, but you never know. It seems like it's difficult. We had a message come through about some legislation, and I went back to my cell and I called on my home phone. I'm not really sure what the rules are for lobbying. We're told when we're hired that, we shouldn't be lobbying or calling our legislators on the cell phone or sending emails on our company computer. So I have a home office, so I just grab the other phone and and I call, because I've always called. I've been an advocate for a long time. We live in a small town. I fought Walmart coming to our town because they're billionaires and they want money from poor people for some reason. They had their hand out. They don't want to pay taxes. They want money from the state, the county, and the city. And they're not really providing anything. They're just hauling their money away, and they don't really do much for the community while they're there except make money. So I've got a little bit of experience. I was involved in the anti-war movement during the Iraq War. And I've been an independent living specialist for about 5 years, and I love the way that advocacy fits in, and teaching people just to be a self-advocate is a big deal. Just a basic win recently. I'm a caregiver also, and my father lives with me, and we went to the doctor's office, and the door was really heavy for the bathroom. My dad's incontinent, and I had to go into this bathroom with him. And I was wearing my caregiver hat, not thinking at the time, but I went through the process, got back to the waiting room, and put on my independent living cap and said, wait a minute, that's not right. So I contacted their community health worker the following day, and within about 4 weeks, they had installed a opener, electronic opener. It was so cool to see how fast they did. Sometimes I think people just need to recognize because they don't think about it. The staff there, they have their own bathrooms. They're not with the community bathrooms. So maybe it just was something that was not noticed, but it was cool that it happened so quickly. But I think that we've got some major issues. I would imagine this one is nationwide, which is we call it our caregiver crisis. And I'm kind of pushing on the caregiver co-op idea. So at the conference, I did get to talk to some state officials from the DHS and so forth. And that is something that I feel is the only answer. We have one co-op in our whole state, and their turnover rate is much lower, and their employees are happier. And if their employees are happier, that means that the consumers are happier. So trying to get the idea that they exist and that they're a possibility in our state so that we could maybe go around the corporate model that has been proving to be useless pretty much. As long as there's somebody needing to get their greasy fingers into the pot that doesn't actually work and take it out of the hands of the people that do the sweating and bleeding and wiping butts and everything else, um, it's a ridiculous system. So pushing on that, I've noticed there's some growth. I was doing a little bit of research and there's some growth in that area nationwide. So maybe the time is now. The other thing that
Absolutely.
we're kind of, just one thing that we ran across, just a regular meeting with our local aging and disability resource center. I'm on a bunch of disability and dementia councils for 4 counties. And it's interesting to see how different counties operate and where the ideas come from. And one thing that we thought of is we want to possibly get a sticker for the driver's license, like they used to have the organ donor sticker that says caregiver. Because if a caregiver is involved in an accident, how does the person waiting for them know that they're not going to show up? What if there's somebody with dementia at home and they just took off to grab, some milk and bread and they're not coming back? What about that person at home? So I think that I think alerting the first responders to the fact that this person is a caregiver could be really beneficial for the people that are receiving the care. That's all I got for right now.
I like that idea. So the sticker, I think that's something that I've never heard anybody say, which maybe they have, but I like that idea very much. I think it makes sense.
Well, I think for our caregiver conference this year, we're gonna give away. We started with a seatbelt, kind of like a koozie, a Velcro koozie that goes and says caregiver. So that would alert the first responders there, but I think it needs to go statewide. And I think
Okay.
that would be inexpensive and a good way to go. So uh, judging by what the response was at the conference, it seems like they're going to look for the right time. All those things with legislation, you gotta time it correctly or it could get just drowned out by something else.
That could almost be a good thing for a workshop for the April conference too. So then you get it more national attention.
I'm not going to be attending the April conference. It's in the town where I grew up and I don't like Chicago. That's why I'm in Wisconsin. I I graduated, I turned 18, I hopped on a bus and got out of there really quick. The woods is where I belong. Some people just aren't born where they belong.
I understand that. But I mean, I think that idea just makes a lot of sense, but it's getting that awareness to, you know, all the first responders, everybody that would end up seeing that, but all across the country, it's doing that. And I I don't know. I'm blown away by that. I like that. What do you think, Brooke?
I really like the idea of the sticker, but I think the sticker has moved to they just ask, and so now it's just um, if you're a donor, it says D on your license, I believe. I don't know. I didn't go get mine to look, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And so it elevating it to like the DMV level within a state would make it more consistent. I mean, maybe the reason they went away from stickers is they came off. But uh also whenever like whenever you're in an accident or I don't know, pulled over or whatever, whenever you interact with law enforcement and they enter your name into their computers, databases, whatever, I believe the donor part would come up. So how do we make it to where it's flagged for the caregiver? I don't think we can go as far as like, who are you a caregiver for? But at the same time, like, I think that would have a little more officialness to it. I'm not trying to downplay it in any way. I just think of like a service animal. I'll use that example. So the service animal has the harness or the vest that identifies them as a service animal, but you can order that on Amazon, and it's gave the real, I'm air quoting for those who can't see me, it's given true service animals a bad name. And because there are a few bad people out there, and I don't want to call them bad people, there are a few people who abuse the system or take advantage of the system. And so how do we implement something that is going to be valid or going to be seen as I don't know what the word is that I want. Like I'm air quoting nothing right now. Legit, for lack of a better word. I'm like, how do we make sure that this is legit? But
I don't think it has the same, I mean, it's an interesting analogy, but using the service animal, but the service animal is a totally different situation because it allows people to bring their animal anywhere. A caregiver is somebody just stating what they are so that the first responders can be on alert for where they're supposed to be and who they're caring for. So, and the only reason I think the sticker would be a good idea is because before everybody that is a caregiver could get it on their license, because our licenses get renewed, every 8 years or longer in some states. That way it could be on the license right away until you do get your renewal. Just
Right.
put it out there.
One of the things I've done in like our community, and it's different, but it's kind of the same. But so like people who have seizures, right? Or if they're diabetic or whatever, we've gone to the police and we've trained them, but then they've gotten into the system. So like if they happen to see this person falling over and they think they're drunk, they can, they take their ID, they see that, oh no, or they already have a picture of them and they know that that person is, they have a seizure disorder or they have diabetes or whatever, because it's which my whole thing was trying to keep police from trying to tase somebody who they thought was drunk, or that type of thing. But it's just getting that awareness in front of first responders so they know, like you're saying, there could be somebody at home with dementia and waiting for somebody to come home. They could have a broken back and in the hospital, and they don't know. So I mean, it's a good um, hypothesis of something that needs to just be brought about, more nationwide, I think. But how that's actually done, that can be done nationwide, I don't know. But
I think it would also give an idea how many people are caregivers.
mm,
And it would be interesting if we could harness that power into a voting block, but it'd be great. I don't know if that's possible, but back to that presentation I gave, if everybody in Wisconsin that is a caregiver or receives caregiving were to call their representative, their state representative, and say, well, this is an issue that's really important to me. What you going to do about it? They would start wondering, well, and I don't care if you're from what party or the other. If you're not voting the way that I want you to, I'm going to start working against you, and you're not going to want all of us to do that.
right,
So a little bit of little wedge in there, move them a little bit, and let them know that it's important.
absolutely, absolutely. Tom Olin has joined us. Hi, Tom
And,
Olin.
and I'm so sorry, Don, that I missed what you were saying. Can you can you do it in 2 sentences? What we were just talking about?
We were talking about an idea in Wisconsin where we want to possibly get a sticker as a caregiver that goes on the driver's license. So if that person is involved in an accident, that first responders would know to check on whoever they're responsible for.
Neat, neat. Thank you.
And Tom, I've seen your name. I met you at somewhere here in Wisconsin when you came through, I think on the bus for the 35th anniversary of the
Yeah,
park.
and I also spent 5 years at Independence First also.
Oh, okay. The new
So there
Ben
probably
Barrett, I
a few
think.
places that we could have met.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah. Well, when they're coming through, maybe you could come along with them this year.
that's a whole different world, a whole different tour, even though they call me every once in a while for things, they're using some past drivers and things like that. But yeah, I've moved out. I'm in Tucson, Arizona now. But good to see you again. And actually, a lot of things are happening in Wisconsin. You just had a few hospitals that just went under private equity because of private equity, and that's happening all throughout the United States right now, which impacts the rural areas probably the most. I mean, in a sense that we got people now have to travel very, very far with very little transportation, in our world. And so that's another area where a lot of concern. Do you have an agenda?
Don't have an agenda. What do you have that you'd like to talk about?
You should know that I always have something.
Yes, you do.
Well, one of the big things that are happening right now that concerns all of us, especially those who are mobility impaired, is that, well, some of you might know that one of my big issues right now is private equity, and I'll be everything's so tied to it. But DME is something that we used to have mom and pop companies and other companies. Now we only have 2 big companies. when it comes to wheelchairs, especially. There's a couple of states that are doing some really, really good work. Every state's Colorado has done some stuff. California, you got the lemon law, but now it's coming down to, with only 2 companies, and they private equity is a way to make money, and it's putting it extracts the wealth in our community. And it gives us hardly anything. That's just what they do. They make money. They don't care about us. And you'll see right now, HCBS services are going over to private equity. MCOs are getting kind of pissed off at them because they're having to pay more money, and MCOs like money too. So that's kind of weird. But the durable medical stuff, there's Connecticut and Massachusetts are going through some really heavy changes on that right now. They're actually today or tomorrow talking to the 2 big companies. They've got 2 bills. One of them in Connecticut, they actually have legislatively, they have a wheelchair task force in the legislature, state legislature, and they came up with a bill. And of course, the private equity said, no, we can't do that. Well, whatever, but, and they fucking lie. I've never seen that type of capitalism before, and it's a renegade part of capitalism. It's where they don't fucking care about anything except to make money. And in our world, if you can think of all of our services being taken over by private equity, and then look at the statistics of they never do anything above grade. It's always substandard care, because one of the ways to make money is to cut staff. And that's what's happened in the DME world too. They cut repair people. They have to order something out of state for your chair. So how if you don't have a backup chair, how you're going to be in bed for a while. So it's a really interesting. I'll be doing a workshop at Nickel on the DME stuff, but it's something that we all have to get into and think about it. We got to connect the dots in every state. It's not, it's in every state, and we got to. In my state, Arizona, I'm getting the PNA and the silk and some of the sills together. So we're going to try to do a committee, a legislative committee on the so they can investigate what's happening with private equity in our state. Because most everyone's fighting it, except you don't hear about it, because they are contracted, and the prisons are contracted with private equity and the healthcare, and then the food services, the commissary, and the communications. They're all run by 90% of prisons are run. Those things are run by private equity. In our state, we're fighting because the healthcare, they're killing people. Elizabeth Warren just recently did one of the biggest things that happened in private equity is in Massachusetts is the 3 big hospitals are going under because of private equity. But just before that, one of the nursing homes, why would you send a person to a nursing home that is owned by private equity when you know that they have a 10% morbidity rate? During COVID, it was 40%, but right now, and we just don't know who is, yeah, our community doesn't even know who private equity owns, you know, and so we're not even given the chance to say no to a entity that might be under private equity. But I love it's so bad, and they had the state legislator had a last 2 weeks ago had a committee legislative hearing, a state legislative hearing, and then the feds came in and had another hearing from the help committee, which is Senator Markey and Elizabeth Warren, both from that state. Senators put on a hearing too, and during the hearing, one of the facts during the hearing that just kind of like I had to go back and look at listen to the hearing again. Was 90% of autism services are now under private equity. So that means isolation for anyone. I mean, it's bad news always. There's nothing good about it except for who profits from it. And those profit goes to usually out of the country. But anyhow, Elizabeth Warren says, if you let private equity loose in healthcare, people die. And I'll end it for that. I'll end my little thing on that, what's happening around the country on that. And NDR, I'm working with NDRN on private equity, Doretta, of course, and in Nickel. And hopefully, you know, you all can figure out what we should do, you know, because it hits us in the rural areas a lot. Okay.
Tom, you know, there's something that we talked about previously in our state. I'm trying to push for caregiver co-ops. And I feel that is the only way that we could get around that corporate model.
Yep.
Because co-ops have less turnover and the employees are happier, making
Yep.
better service for the people.
No, you're on the right area. You know, the thing is I can say, you know, private equity should not be in healthcare. Well, they shouldn't be, but I can say that, but we don't, as a community, I mean, or as a culture, in the disability community, we do not have capital formation to, you know, to take away the private equity and do those things ourselves, except for things like what you were just saying. So that is very, very important. Now, we might be able to, as much as I don't like working with MCOs a lot, but they have money. They're getting real pissed off by private equity too. So we might be able to work out a deal with them giving us enough money to start those programs that you're talking about, Don. It's the community has to fight back, because right now that wealth extraction takes everything out of our community, so we have no money to do anything with, you know. No, but you're actually that's the big thing. After, you know, after we try to stop it, we've got to, you know, have those other things in place, and that's why, you know, they're taking over hospitals. And it's just like one after the other are closing. And in the rural areas, God, 22 rural hospitals in the last 2 or 4 years have closed because of private equity. Well, I don't say private, they just closed. I haven't worked out who's private or not, you know. But the thing is, you know, hospitals should be very nonprofit, should be community orientated, you know. They shouldn't be. They'll tell you, oh, we'll run efficiently. We'll run things efficiently, but that doesn't mean that it helps us at all, or it helps you know, patient care at all, for sure.
So, Tom, is there a plan or something we could do as the April Advocacy Committee to do advocacy or help against private equity? Is there something like that we could actually form? Is there something we could do that would look like some sort of plan?
Right now, I've got some people that I have dyslexia and dysgraphia, so I have ghostwriters. And we're at a time where everyone has so little bandwidth of doing anything else. It's amazing. And so slowly, I'm trying to put a narrative together, a disability narrative, because all the narrative, the administration right now is saying, "Oh my God, what's happening?" They just got done putting a commission committee, I don't know, of DOJ, HHS, and FTC on private equity. I've gotten some of the people to write comments for in 4 days. But so, the administration is out there doing something, but it's like I said, it's right now, if you look at anything that's involved in that, and there's some really good info. They've got some workshops that is really good to look at. I've got all of that, but it's still very heavily labor, intensified. I'll let me see. Do I have now? Anyhow, look at a platform against private equity, and it's mostly all about jobs and things like that. Since Toys R Us and Radio Shack went under, and housing, that's I like to talk about other things, but we got people that need to go into housing, and private equity owns more than 50% of affordable housing. So you can understand how even that world of private equity affects us. So I'm trying to work out our narrative, because our narrative is a little different. Especially in the IL world, we like consumer control, consumer directive. We want person-centeredness, to happen, and that's out the door when private equity comes in. They don't care. In fact, if you have a law that says that they have to do something, they don't care. They have enough money. We're talking about a combined amount of private equity that's around $5 trillion. And that means that they can come in and buy out anything in healthcare, and then extract the money. What they love doing is extracting anything of our services that gets reimbursement. They know how to get our reimbursement. The administration said, "Hey, here's a whole bunch of money for HCBS services." Well, I'm on a few listservs of private equity, and I have this one sheet that says 5 good reasons to get into HCBS services. They want to make money off of us, and we've always known that everyone's made money off of us at one time or another, and they're still doing it. So I'm trying to do 2 things: a narrative for us, and then private equity and disability services by the numbers, so that people can understand that number things. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And when that comes out, then we can share it all, But to answer the question, I don't have anything. Think about it. The thing is once you connect the dots, your mouth is just going to go wide open, because you won't, everywhere you turn. 3 days ago, if you can get to there's a paywall, but on Business Insider talks about how private equity has gotten into special ed and how bad what's happening to that. And that's the case in everything, and it's so amazing that we're all so far behind, this, and because private equity is private, it's been silent. And you got to also kind of, I don't know if I would say another reason would be that private equity owns 50% of over 50%. Private equity and hedge funds own more than 50% of our news agencies. That might not have anything to do. It might have, but I mean, it's so bad. Private equity is so bad and it's so secretive, and we don't know who owns what. CMS is trying to figure that one out. There are about 3 other committees that federal committees are trying to figure it out. But out of the 100 bills trying to pull back private equity or find something about it, I don't know, you know, all that, none of them have been passed because they have lobby power. They have a lot of money. Like I said, they got trillions of dollars. Lobbying, they can do millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars in a day. So it's up to actually the state for us to do the state thing mostly. We can get a lot of maybe information out of the feds, but it's so secretive that there's an you can Google FBI private equity report, you know, and they have one that the FBI is pretty sure that that's how organized crime launders their money. That's how secretive this whole thing
It's really
That-
mind blowing, isn't it? I mean, it's huge.
It
The
is
only
so-
thing that we have, Tom, is
Yeah.
numbers. They have money, we have numbers.
Yeah,
And
exactly. We
that's
have
the
our
only way, and actually they own so much of our politicians, both at the state and national level. The only thing we could do is threaten to have those politicians lose their seats by the numbers of us that are coming out to vote against them.
yeah.
And then we got to run people that are going to do what we want them to do. That's another thing. That's a problem
Yeah.
as well. Because
Yeah.
then they can't raise the same money and they get, you know, I've made the example that if 1 million people in Wisconsin threw in $10 a piece because we like a candidate, somebody that doesn't live in our state could bring 20 million and say, we're going to just blow you
Yeah.
out of the water with negative advertising and make you, because lying's okay
Yeah.
in campaigns. So as long as once lying got to be a standard, then it could convince people that are unable or unaware that a lie is a lie, and we've seen what that turned into.
Yeah. Now, yeah, that's going to always help. That's going to always help. We also have to figure out what commissions statewide. You know, there's a Department of Corporations within the state that have laws that to find out who really owns what. There are also some of the states have what they call a corporate medicine law. I'm saying it wrong. Where corporate are not supposed to direct healthcare, doctors and things like that, but they do now because even 60% of doctors are in one form of operation that is owned by private equity. A lot of clinics are owned by private equity. Most of your emergency rooms in the United States are run by private equity, and they make money by not having a lot of doctors at the emergency rooms. And when it comes to people with disabilities, that means a very long wait for everyone, but we're impacted a little bit more, a little bit differently. And so, you know, there's a lot of things in the statewide that we really have to say, hey, you know, let's get on these boards, because they're the other people that are on the boards are letting this happen. And they will come in. You know, the PACE program, the federal PACE program for persons with very severe disabilities, are supposed to be done by nonprofit, but they came into Colorado and they lobbied the state legislatures to make it for profit. So, and they won, and everyone hates that program now in Colorado. And you know, it's so many things like that, and we don't hear about it. I mean, I'm amazed. You know, in fact, when I finally my eyes went wide open, I thought I was like, oh my God, this really can't be. I can't even talk about people because I can't believe it. You know, it's you know, if I sounded like a conspiracy nut, you know. But it's all around, and as soon as you connect all the dots, you were just, you know, amazed. And it's the biggest threat to IL that I know right now, because they don't care about us other than making money off of us. And we you know, out goes nothing about us without us. That goes out the door. You know, anything that they don't care, because they're only in it for 3, 5, or 7 years, and then they'll sell. That's they're trying to make it. They're trying to make that service look really good so they can sell it to someone else, and at the cost of us. And yeah, it's but you're right. I mean, I feel that we can do it. I know people power. You know, I've seen people power. And one of the funnier things is that the same, you know, the stuff that's happening on the campuses right now, and they're trying to divest, you know, some of the stuff out of that's going towards one of the companies is Blackstone, and that's also one of the companies that, I mean, that's one of my things that I want to do is go to the universities and say, hey, divest from these private equity firms. That's another way of getting to them, is going after the investors, you know, because private equity uses other people's monies, you know, and they love using the government monies and also the institutions, the universities, their money. And so it's like, interesting things are always happening.
So, Brooke, you looked like you were going to say something.
A lot to digest, Tom. Just trying to, you know, when Don Do asked, you know, how can the April Advocacy Committee engage, or what can we do? So just before this meeting, I was in a different meeting talking about systems advocacy and the benefits of systems advocacy and why we should be doing systems advocacy and what that looks like on a center level and what that looks like on a silk level. And I left it 30 minutes early, so don't ask me how it ended.
I left there too.
Oh, okay. So maybe you hung out longer because you were later to this one than I'm just kidding. But it's one of the people, and I'm gonna not remember all of the presenters' names, and I apologize for that. But was really talking about relationships, and that's what I like to talk about, is relationships. So you know, you're gonna be more successful in any advocacy efforts if you've developed and built those relationships. And you know, Don Posh. I'm like, wait, what's your last name? Because I got two. He was talking about, you know, how long he's been doing advocacy and working with legislators in his state. And so, yeah, it's all about those relationships. And I don't think we can get completely pushed out by private equity if some of those relationships are strong. But I guess my question is, like, how do we unite and become a unified force instead of, okay, well, there's this meeting at noon and there's this meeting at 1 and there's this meeting tomorrow at 2. And you have to go to all 3 of them and they're 3 different groups. And it's like, okay, well, I went to all 3 and I still don't know which direction to go forward. I'd like to go forward. I'd like, how do we come together across all groups, across all states, across all networks, across sitters and silks, and people that aren't part of either of those, or just people with disabilities, who maybe that's not what they want. If we're supposed to be consumer controlled and consumer driven and person centered, maybe they don't want to go into a center and receive a service, or maybe they don't want to apply and serve on a state council. Okay, that's great, but how do we bring them into the movements with us as well? And how do we, I just feel like I said this about 4.5 years ago. I kind of stopped saying it for a couple of years, but about 4.5, 5 years ago, I was asked a question, and the question was, what did I see was the biggest threat to the independent living movement? And my answer to then is probably the same answer I have today. And it's the fracturing within. It's that we're not unified. It's that this group's doing one thing and that group's doing this thing. And like, where do we come together to be that force in the movement?
Yeah, I think you got to find those, find the things that a lot of us are fighting in the organization world first. One of the neat things about the DME stuff, it's you can be IDD and still use a chair. You can be you can be a psych survivor and still use it, have a brace or whatever. And the PNAs are where are you from, Brooke? California?
Currently? Originally? How'd you know? Originally, I am from California. I lived in Utah for 25 years, and I now live in Oregon and have lived in Oregon for about 4
Okay. I don't know. I've lived there too. I was on Mountain Hood. But anyhow, I have 6 states that I'm working with on private equity stuff, and they're working now with some of their, especially the Connecticut and the Massachusetts, working really good with different groups, disability groups, and that I really like. I think bringing people together, communicating that way,
coalition building.
Coalition building so important now. I mean, that's.
But I think it's different. So I had put in the chat, and it was probably before you came, so you probably can't see it. But I did spend 25 years in Utah, and I was part of a group called the Legislative Coalition for People with Disabilities, and it was cross disabilities, and it included IL and mental health and DD, and you pick. It doesn't matter. It was a coalition of all of them, and they were formed back in like the mid 80s, 87-ish. And they still had some of their original founders, I'm doing air quotes, involved in that movement, involved in that coalition. And so the amount of respect that group carried because of the longevity and the cross disability and the inclusion of all, it was just really phenomenal. And so some of those original leaders, when they walked into the state capitol, everybody turned and listened. They wanted to know what they had to say. And all of the agency and department directors would show up to their meetings and they would give reports and they wanted their feedback. And I think I moved to Oregon thinking there would be something similar here, and it doesn't exist. And so I shouldn't say, well, it doesn't exist. I haven't found it. Does that mean that I can't be part of the creation? No, I'll just have to build it and it will come. But at the same time, I feel like 2024 coalitions are different than the 1980s, 1990 coalitions. And so a lot of things now are, you know, electronic and virtual and social media driven. And it's just like, I think that all of that is valuable, but at the same time, there has to be both. Like, you can't just have the in-person people go to a space and meet once a month. Okay, well, that works for some people. And you can't just have the virtual, we meet once a month in a Zoom room. Like, okay, that works for some people. I mean, I was on a call earlier today that was literally a phone call from RSA. And I was like, this is a phone call? I registered for this meeting and it's a phone call? And I just got to listen to women talk and it sounded like I was listening to computers. And I was like, I don't learn this way. Like, there was no interaction, there was no engagement. It was just some people talking at me. And I was like, I'll just go read the FAQs because I can't do this. And so it's finding multiple ways that work for multiple people and multiple styles of learning and multiple styles of engagement. But like, I think there needs to be a huge focus across the country, across the networks, across disabilities, across everything. Pick a thing to put in there across of coalition building. Like, what does that look like? How can we be more effective? How can we bring people together for the common cause, for the end goal, for the same purpose, instead of we're all, I mean, lots of people use the word siloed, you know, we're all siloed and we're all working really hard, but we're like hamsters in their little spinning wheels because we're not really going anywhere because it's just one person trying to kick the wheel. When there's 1,000 other people kicking their own wheel, how do we bring everybody together in a bigger wheel so that we can take turns kicking? That makes sense.
Especially when there are so many commonalities that if we looked and listened and actually listened to each other, we would see that these commonalities would mesh us together and make us bigger and stronger. But we don't do that. We don't actually listen to each other. We don't see what can make us stronger, make us better against other people. We just don't do that anymore. There is the fracturing. There's something, everybody has an agenda, right? Used to be the gay agenda. I never had that part. I never had the agenda for that. I didn't know what happened. But there's always an agenda that they say, that they want to get this done. They have to get this done. I was in an Olmsted meeting yesterday. This is off the subject. And they told us what Olmsted was. And I'm like, it was the state agency. And I'm like, you can't tell us what Olmsted is. We know what Olmsted is better than you know what Olmsted is. And, you know, that's where we're at now. And it's like, no. I mean, so that rebellious ness of when, like, I first started, and even people before us, you know, like Luann Kibbe and you know, people that I learned from, you know, and it's usually women that were like the fighters, right? We need those rebellious spirits again, saying, no, you don't tell us what to do. We know what IL is. We will tell you, and we will actually make things better because we know how to make them better. And Tom, you know this. I mean, because, well, you've been all around all of it, doing all of it. So it should be not as hard as it actually is, but somehow something's making it more difficult. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, social media is like, you know, it has its good things and it really has its bad things too. It makes you think that we're all together, but we don't talk to each other, you know, individually. I mean, I have probably about 6 or 7 youth that I talk to weekly, or bi-weekly, I should say, not all the time, but I keep up with them, and it's really important. And when you know, I love the Zooms, you know, I love the Zooms because I can see people and all that, but I want to also have that connection with them. And so I call, you know, I use the phone. The phone is really, it's that one-on-one thing that is really, really important that you don't get anywhere else, you know. it's, I mean, we're really lucky. There's only, a few of us here. We can all kind of talk, but boy, it gets, twice as many people here, and then we kind of lose a little bit, keep on losing and losing a little bit. And I mean, it was a great, the thing, the Zoom that we were just both on was really great. I really liked it, but I wish there were breakout rooms, because there was so much that could be said that everyone should be, should have been talking, almost at the same time, because there was some really good stuff there. And I really liked some of the people there too. But it is at one, we've got to, you talk about Luann, Luann Kitty, God, when we were doing things, together. We called each other. We had phone trees. We had, and we did things statewide. I mean, that was a great state to live in. Also,
Yeah.
I've been real lucky. I've been able to live almost everywhere.
Kansas, right?
Kansas.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like, hold on, for us that don't know and never got to live there, Dawn, you missed it. It was the great state of Kansas.
Well, one thing that we're missing, and I think because we rely so much on the technology, is the old way of getting things done. And you take 10 people with some signs out to the Senate Majority Leader's office and call the media, you call the newspapers, you call the TV and say, hey, there's 10 people out there making some noise that, we need to go back to that because this is not working. This being nice stuff isn't working. We got to quit being nice. Seriously. Because I remember going to some actions like that where next thing you know, you're on TV the next day. Well, if we went and said, hey, in our states or all 50 states, however you work it in your state, you go to the Senate Majority Leader's residence, or not his residence, but his office, and you say that, we have a caregiver crisis and you seem to be ignoring it as if it doesn't exist. And when you start saying that on the TV, in the newspaper, people that are experiencing it are going to come to your side because they're living it. But
The
they
other
don't
thing,
know that anybody's doing anything about it, so they're just living with it. That's the problem.
the other thing though is I don't think that means that you're not nice. Like you said, we have to
that's
stop
true.
being
I
nice.
just think we've been
Well,
too nice.
I'm
We've
like,
been
there's
too nice.
nothing wrong with 10 people going and freedom of speech. Like that doesn't mean that you're being rude or unnice. So I think that, but I think in some people's mind it might. So it's reshifting that and redefining like that so that it's not looked at as being rude or disrespectful or fighting. Like,
It wouldn't look, if it's your issue and you're seeing it, you're not going to care if it looks rude or disrespectful because you're living it.
Well,
Because when
you're
your caregiver
yeah.
doesn't show up because they're not getting paid enough money to do the job that they're supposed to do, that's when people that have had that experience that, oh, I had to miss my meal today. Oh, I had to piss my pants today, whatever it possibly is. And we have to get down into the root of all this. There was a great, here's something you could look up. There's this gal in Wisconsin, and she's on several coalitions, and it's called Stewing with Stacy. And Stewing with Stacy, she does a quick little video on what it's like when her caregivers don't show up. And I think you might find that to be quite interesting. She had a breakout session during the conference I attended, and I went to hers and she went to mine because both of ours were on advocacy. So I think that's the way that she's putting it, and just saying this is exactly what goes on. And I don't think people understand what goes on. They just know there's a problem with it. And well, if it's not my problem, I got my own problems. But if people could start relating and say, well, that problem is the same as mine, wow, that makes a big difference. And you get, apparently there's nearly 1 million people that in Wisconsin of voting age that are disabled, or at least claim to have some sort of disability, and they are not voting together. And that's kind of where we're having this problem. But you have to show them that this is something where we need movement, no matter if it crosses your party line or not. Because if your person's not doing something to improve your life, what's the point of you representing me? Because grandpa voted for that party, and so did daddy, and so did mommy, and so did my brothers and sisters. Well, don't matter. You're not helping my class of people. And I'm going to go to the budget hearings, and I think I've gone to a couple in my state, and the next time I go, I'm going to be less nice than I was the last 2 times. Just the way I think that watching some of the old ADAPT videos and watching the Gang of 19 and how things were done, well, yeah, it was done that way. Then the ADA was passed, and everybody kind of like sat back because the ADA was passed, and it they're chipping away at it. They tried to take voting rights away. They've been working on that in the state of Wisconsin for ever since the 2020 election. And we did gain some of it back, but there's still stuff there that has to get redone. So rights that are earned can be taken away as well.
Yep, that's for sure. I do see. I mean, that's the way our generation kind of, do see things and had seen things. The generation I see now is a lot of times they're scared to do what they're doing because they might get canceled on social media. They're very tepid, whatever. That's why I try to have some young mentees all around, because it is different. And I don't know. I mean, it's a hard one. It's a hard one. Coalition building nowadays is not as what it was. It's different. And it still can be good. There are still things that people gather and do things. There's still another kind of adapt people getting together once or twice a year, starting again after COVID. I'm not too involved with them, but I'm still involved. Anyone that does anything, I'm try to be involved. But it's not like you said, back in the days when we didn't have anything, we were really pissed off. and there's a lot of people that are not as pissed off as we were, I think. I'm still pissed off. I still feel that way, at times. But I just don't, it's a hard one. A lot of young people are, we don't have, there's not young people here with us right now, and there should be.
And in Nebraska, we reconstituted our ADAPT, which had been kind of, it's laid kind of silent because people with disabilities are not able to do anything with the legislature. We're not able to, so like if you live in different parts of Nebraska, you can't go to the legislature virtually. You can't do anything virtually and give any type of comment or anything. And so, we've hired lawyers so we can get legislation passed. But I'm the youngest person in Nebraska ADAPT, right? Because younger people are not.
How old are you? Just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
These, right? Anyway, so it's something that we shouldn't have to be getting lawyers to be able to have our rights be heard about legislation. And our one bill that actually should be a national bill. So it's, if there's anything having to do with disability, legislators have to talk to the disability community. So that way they're not just going and talking to somebody who is a stand-in like the ARC or the PNA or something like that. They have to talk to the disability community on what it will do. Will it be good or bad for the disability community, a certain piece of legislation? I think that should be a standard bearer across the United States for legislation. If it's going to affect the disability community, it needs to be talked to the disability community. So as Nebraskans, we are starting to do nothing about us without us in legislation. And we need to get that into DC. So like Casey or somebody could do that, because that would be a game changer if that could pass.
No, I like that. Actually, in my mind, I call it the disability community impact statement. That everything
that's how we put it.
You have to know the impact.
Right. That's how it's written. It's an impact statement. Really? Yeah.
I like that. I hadn't heard of that before. Thank you. Great. Send it that way. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can't stand back and just let others do anything for us anymore. And so
no. And I think that one of the reasons what's happening right now, that nothing's getting, we're letting other people do it. And I mean, I like our allies. We have great allies, but I don't know if you got, well, I'm sure you have seen it done. I have another organization I'm in called Liberators for Justice, and we just did an IL statement,
Right.
And the people that are against it are are non-disabled family that have kids, and it's kind of funny. I'm feeling, I get this, I see that they think of their kid more than they think of the rest of the community, and I have friends that are parents, great parents of kids with disabilities and stuff like that. But it stops us, it's when we're a disability-led organization, disability-led is a very powerful arena when it comes to legislation. I mean, we have lived stories, we have all that stuff that can impact any bill or anything when it comes to disability. And yet I've seen, I'm kind of amazed at times when things like that there's something that we're not, or they're not seeing, and it in the sense of parents or non-disabled thinking their own way and not the disability way,
Right.
One other thing
I'm
that
sorry to interrupt. This is the
we could
interpreter. I do
use-
need to leave the meeting. So I just wanted to let you know before I hopped off.
All right. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
One thing that we need to do is get that elderly community into our disability, because a lot of people, especially in the rural areas, I'm still cutting firewood, I'm still deer hunting, that's the kind of people I got. And they don't relate their disability with us.
Yeah.
It's like,
No,
well,
it's
I'm just
aging.
older. That's, and if we could group them in or gather them, we'd grow ourselves a little bit better that way too. And they are known to be voters. So
There's also a lot of
that's
money
how
in
you,
aging programs.
yes, yes, there is. And you know, one thing that I have that's kind of cool for our state is I've been a community radio DJ and started off as a peace and justice music show, but then now that I'm an independent living specialist, I started a independent living show. So if there's legislation or something coming from this group or another group that I'm in, I could announce that at the beginning of the discussion. So then we're streaming it. It's getting out there, you
Right.
know, it's getting that information out there. I know that, and this is really interesting. When I first talked about a caregiver co-op, the next day I did an outreach at a senior center and I talked to the manager of the senior center. And I said, yeah, yesterday we were talking about caregiver co-ops. And she said, oh, my friend called me last night and said, we're going to have a caregiver co-op right here. So it got out there. That
Yeah.
is the cool part. When that happens, you know, that means you're reaching somebody. So I don't want to let this thing go. So I've been kind of I contacted more of a progressive newspaper in the south end of our state. We're in the far north end of Wisconsin near Lake Superior, and all the population is on the south end. So you have to inform those people
Right.
because they're closer to their legislator, they're closer to the government, and they can help move things where maybe we can't because we're too far away from their offices.
There's
Well,
a kind of a interesting type of co-op stuff in Berkeley right now. You might want to go. I forgot the name of them, but they also do wheelchair repair stuff too within their attendant service stuff. It's kind of neat. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I'm trying to think of the person who's involved.
Didn't that start with Ed Roberts, the wheelchair repair and that? Didn't
Say
that
that
start
again?
with Ed Roberts?
Pardon?
The wheelchair repair, didn't that start with Ed Roberts
Um,
at Berkeley? Or am I incorrect in that
no,
assumption?
no, you're actually the if you want to know a little history there, I actually looked at.
I have to go, guys. I'll see
yeah,
you
and
next time.
thanks, Brooke, and we are actually going to
Okay.
have to wrap up just because we do not have an interpreter in case somebody would come on.
Okay.
But Don, I am really glad that you joined today, and I hope you come next month also. Tom, same with you. So,
All right, well,
You know, Don, you're up.
Yeah.
I know where you are, up by Superior.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know Ben Barrett.
Yeah.
That's a very good friend of mine.
Yep.
I'll tell him that I saw you today.
Okay, do, yes.
all right,
Okay.
I will
Don,
let you all go. Thank you
Don,
very much. I appreciate it. It was good.
Tom.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a good afternoon.
You all too.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.